Hey y'all.
Hello everyone, it's James here. I hope you're doing well. So I found an interesting video on TikTok this morning by a user called Melanie Knights. She's replying to a comment here which says, how do people accept that gambling is an addiction but food isn't? Also, you can stay away from gambling, etc., but you can't stay away from food. So she's going to have a little bit of a talk about how she thinks that food addiction is not real. It's basically something that's a phrase coined by marketing for weight loss drugs and weight loss products. So let's have a listen to what she's got to say.
If food was an actual addiction, we wouldn't be able to solve it by giving ourselves more of the thing. If food was an actual addiction, we wouldn't be able to solve the issue by giving ourselves more of the thing.
What she's saying here is that if we have complete free access to food, no restrictions whatsoever, then we won't be addicted to it. Which, in a world full of processed and ultra processed foods, it's kind of impossible to stop yourself from having like just one chocolate bar or just one bag of crisps. The whole purpose of ultra processed food is designed to make you keep eating, making you addicted to the ingredients that are in it. And I've said this a few times before, ultra processed food is designed so that your brain is tricked into thinking that you haven't eaten, so you will eat more of this ultra processed food, thus consuming more calories, thus making you overweight, and it rolls on that way. She's going to cite some study regarding rats where they were deprived of food. The rats would then binge on the food after they've been restricted for 12 hours or so. I found some studies, and I don't know whether it's the exact one that she's talking about, but I'll let her explain a bit more and then we'll have a look.
There have been numerous studies over the years that have looked at sugar and food addiction, and not a single one of them has been able to prove that it's actually real. And whilst often food addiction as a term gets used as a marketing ploy, there's also a fundamental misunderstanding of the data. One of the studies that is most often cited as supposed proof of food addiction and is talked about extensively within intuitive eating is this Princeton study on rats. They had two groups of rats. One group were given normal rat chow at normal times and they ate normal amounts of it. And the other group of rats were deprived of food for 12 hours. And then when they were reintroduced to food, they were given this offer of sugar substance or normal rat chow. And the rats gravitated towards the sugar. They ate more than they normally would, and they ate more of the sugar than anything else. And this is often used as proof of sugar addiction. The issue is they couldn't replicate those results without depriving the rats first.
So what she's saying is the rats chose the sugar chow because they were deprived of food for 12 hours, even though the rats were given the choice of normal food or sugar-laden food. I'm already on the fence with what she's trying to say here, but I did find a study that used rats and talks about food addiction, so bear with me 1 second. So we have an article here from nature.com, and its title is Random Access to Palatable Food Stimulates Similar Addiction-like Responses as a Fixed Schedule, but only a fixed schedule elicits anticipatory activation. So here we have the introduction, which says high caloric palatable food stimulates overconsumption, which can then lead to overweight and obesity, which is true in rats and humans. The interesting thing here is in the introduction, and it says restricted or intermittent access to palatable food triggers an increased food-driven response suggested to have similar properties as addiction-like behaviors observed for drugs. In rodents, the food addiction-like behavior includes craving, binge eating, effort behaviors to obtain food, and withdrawal symptoms when the expected food is not provided. Contrasting, free access to palatable food leads to overweight and/or obesity, however, does not trigger addiction-like behavior. Melanie's argument does have some kernel of truth to it in that if you have free access to palatable food, you're less likely to be addicted, but you are still just as likely to be overweight or obese. I'm not really falling for what she's saying here. She's just picking and choosing things that suit her argument, which we all do. When it comes down to it, you do have to look at the facts, and It seems like she's skewing the facts a bit in order to suit her own narrative. The only study I could find from Princeton University about food addiction is this study in 2010. A Princeton University research team has demonstrated that all sweeteners are not equal when it comes to weight gain. Rats with access to high fructose corn syrup gain significantly more weight than those with access to table sugar. So this is talking about the different kinds of sweeteners. And as we know, high fructose corn syrup is in a lot of ultra-processed food. The rats were given high fructose corn syrup sweetened water, and the other set were given normal sugar water. They found that the rats that drank the high fructose corn syrup water gained significantly more weight than those that drank normal sugar water and their normal diet. So this is more to do with ultra-processed foods and their effect on the body. Okay, so we're back to Melanie. Let's see what else she's got to say.
So what is supposed to prove to us that food is addicting actually proves to us the impact of restriction and deprivation on our bodies.
But the study from Princeton University cites that they were given a normal diet, they were just given different kinds of sugar water. So I guess that debunks that.
This is where things like making peace with food can actually resolve binging when there isn't a period of deprivation. Now the nuance here is that when folks are depriving themselves, that can very much feel like an addiction to food. Food addiction resonates with us because that is how it feels to be deprived.
I mean, I do agree here. Depriving yourself can lead to binge eating behaviours. Making food good and bad also induces those kind of addicting behaviours. What we need to do is to make sure we don't demonise food, but rather make it so that we know our limits when it comes to how much we eat. And I think knowing our limits would make for better behaviours. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at some human studies and see how that correlates to the rat studies on addiction. So I found an article here called "What is the Evidence for Food Addiction? A Systematic Review." Highlighted here says, overall, findings support food addiction as a unique construct consistent with criteria for other substance use disorder diagnoses. The evidence further suggests that certain foods, particularly processed foods with added sweeteners and fats, demonstrate the greatest addictive potential. So what it's saying here is that ultra-processed foods can give you a similar feeling to being addicted to drugs. So this website collated a multitude of articles both on humans and on animals, and the conclusion they came to says the results of the current systematic review generally support the validity of food addiction as a diagnostic construct, particularly as it relates to foods high in added sweeteners and refined ingredients. The majority of studies in the current review reported evidence for symptoms related to neurological changes and impaired control, with fewer studies evaluating preoccupation, chronicity, relapse, social impairment, and risky use. So on the whole, the research is in favour of food addiction being real. So if we're cherry picking our arguments that food addiction isn't real, we have a smaller pool to choose from. So to summarise, I think that fat activists have some kernel of truth to what they're saying, which is what lures people in. Once they've been lured in, everything's out the window and they can just talk about how fat's being great, glorifying obesity is wonderful, and all that kind of caper. I hope you found that informative. I certainly did. Very eye-opening indeed. So the word of the day is ultra-processed, if you could put that in the comments. Also give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I shall speak to you very soon. Take care. Bye.